History has a way of repeating itself in the Middle East, but each time the stakes climb higher. As the world watches nervously, tensions between the United States and Iran are once again reaching a boiling point. The arrival of a powerful U.S. aircraft carrier in the region has reignited fears of a direct military confrontation. In diplomatic circles, intelligence briefings, and global newsrooms, one question now dominates the conversation. Is Washington preparing for another strike on Tehran? And if so, what kind of strike, and at what cost? This is not a sudden crisis. It is the latest chapter in a long, volatile story shaped by mistrust, power projection, and unfinished conflicts. What we are witnessing today is the convergence of military movement, political signaling, and strategic calculation, each reinforcing the other in a region where a single misstep can ignite a wider war. The immediate trigger for this renewed anxiety lies in the visible escalation of U.S. military presence in the Middle East. With the aircraft carrier USS Abraham Lincoln entering the region, the message from Washington is unmistakable. Aircraft carriers are not deployed quietly, and they are never sent without purpose. This floating fortress, equipped with F-35 stealth fighters, EA-18G Growler electronic warfare aircraft, and guided missile destroyers, represents not just defense, but deterrence backed by overwhelming force. Open-source intelligence and flight tracking data further confirm that U.S. fighter squadrons have been deployed to Jordan's Muwafaq Salti Air Base. These deployments significantly reduce response time to Iranian airspace and place strategic Iranian assets within operational reach. In military terms, this is known as forward positioning, a classic prelude to either coercive diplomacy or limited kinetic action. According to reports from the UK-based outlet Middle East Eye, U.S. officials are actively discussing the possibility of targeted strikes against high-ranking Iranian officials and military commanders. These are not rumors emerging from fringe sources. They are based on briefings from Gulf officials with close ties to U.S. defense planning. The alleged targets are individuals accused by Washington of direct responsibility for the deaths of Iranian protesters during recent internal unrest. This detail matters. It signals a shift in U.S. posture from broad deterrence toward precision accountability. Rather than large-scale bombing campaigns, the focus appears to be on surgical operations aimed at specific individuals. Such a strategy mirrors past U.S. actions, including the 2020 drone strike that killed Iranian General Qasem Soleimani, a move that fundamentally altered U.S.-Iran relations. To understand why this moment is so dangerous, we must step back and examine the broader timeline. Over the past decade, U.S.-Iran relations have oscillated between fragile diplomacy and open hostility. The collapse of the Iran nuclear deal, the reimposition of U.S. sanctions, and Iran's expanding regional influence through proxy groups have all fueled a cycle of escalation. Recent months have added new pressure points. Iran's internal protests, sparked by social and political grievances, have drawn sharp criticism from Western governments. Washington has increasingly framed Iran's leadership not only as a regional destabilizer, but also as a violator of human rights. This narrative shift has provided political justification for a tougher stance, both rhetorically and militarily. The military buildup we are seeing now is extensive. The United States has reportedly increased the supply of interceptor missiles to the region, strengthened air defense systems, and deployed additional warships across the Middle East and North Africa. This is not symbolic posturing. It is a coordinated operational setup designed to protect U.S. forces and allies while maintaining offensive options. According to Gulf officials cited by Middle East Eye, U.S. military readiness in the region has reached its final stages. Some assessments suggest that a strike could occur within days, although officials also note that timelines remain flexible, dependent on political decisions and intelligence developments. Amid this escalation, political messaging from Washington has been carefully calibrated. Former U.S. President Donald Trump, speaking publicly, claimed that another U.S. naval fleet is moving toward the region. At the same time, he expressed hope that Tehran might still seek a diplomatic understanding with Washington. This dual messaging, threat coupled with overture, is a familiar tactic in American foreign policy. It seeks to apply maximum pressure while leaving the door open for negotiation. But history shows that such strategies often produce unpredictable results, especially when dealing with a state like Iran, whose leadership views resistance as a pillar of national identity. Iran's response has been swift and uncompromising. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Esmail Baghaei declared that any act of aggression would be met with a legitimate and proportional response. This is more than rhetoric. Iran has repeatedly demonstrated its capacity for asymmetric retaliation through missile strikes, cyber operations, and proxy attacks across the region. From Tehran's perspective, U.S. military movements are not defensive. They are existential threats. The memory of past assassinations, sanctions, and covert operations remains fresh. As a result, Iranian military planners are likely already preparing countermeasures, increasing the risk of miscalculation on both sides. At this stage, several actors are deeply involved, each with distinct interests. The United States seeks to deter Iran, reassure allies, and demonstrate resolve without triggering a full-scale war. Iran aims to project strength, preserve regime legitimacy, and avoid appearing weak in the face of external pressure. Regional allies such as Israel and Gulf states have their own stakes. Israel views any weakening of Iran's leadership as a strategic gain, particularly given Iran's support for groups hostile to Israeli security. Gulf countries, meanwhile, fear both Iranian retaliation and regional instability that could disrupt energy markets and internal security. The economic implications of this crisis are enormous. The Middle East remains the world's most critical energy corridor. Any military confrontation involving Iran raises the specter of disruption in the Strait of Hormuz, through which roughly 20% of global oil supply passes daily. Even the perception of risk can drive oil prices upward, affecting inflation and economic stability worldwide. Financial markets are already sensitive to these developments. Defense stocks tend to rise during periods of heightened tension, while emerging markets and energy-importing economies face increased volatility. In short, what happens between Washington and Tehran does not stay between Washington and Tehran. Now, we turn to the critical question: what comes next? Several scenarios are on the table. One possibility is a limited, targeted U.S. strike against specific Iranian officials or facilities. This would aim to send a strong message without provoking a broader conflict. However, even a limited strike carries the risk of retaliation, potentially drawing U.S. forces and allies into a wider confrontation. Another scenario involves diplomatic de-escalation. Under intense pressure, Iran could signal willingness to negotiate, perhaps through intermediaries. This would allow both sides to claim victory, Washington for its show of strength, Tehran for defending its sovereignty without war. A third, more dangerous scenario is escalation by miscalculation. A single incident, an intercepted missile, a misidentified aircraft, or a proxy attack could spiral beyond control, leading to sustained military engagement. Looking ahead, the international context cannot be ignored. Major powers such as Russia and China are watching closely. Both have strategic partnerships with Iran and view U.S. dominance in the Middle East with skepticism. Any conflict could deepen global divisions and further strain an already fragmented international order. Europe, too, finds itself in a difficult position. While aligned with the United States, European governments fear another Middle Eastern conflict that could trigger refugee flows, energy shocks, and political instability at home. In conclusion, the current U.S.-Iran standoff is not merely a regional crisis. It is a test of global stability. It reflects the limits of military power, the fragility of diplomacy, and the enduring consequences of unresolved conflict. Whether this moment leads to confrontation or compromise will depend on decisions made behind closed doors in Washington and Tehran. What is clear is this: the world is once again holding its breath. In the Middle East, history is never far away, and the future is being written, one strategic move at a time.